YNW Melly has been locked up for quite a while, and from what I heard recently, that they're trying to actually get DNA evidence to tie him to the scene of the crime. Number one, what exactly is this case about, and where is it heading?
So this case looks like it's heading to trial. YNW Melly looks like he's going to go to trial facing a double murder charge with his life on the line. They're not seeking the death penalty. Prosecutors have said, I think it was based on his age or for whatever reason, they've said they're not going to seek the death penalty, but he'll be facing, double life sentences. What this case is about is anyone's guess. There is so much there are so many things that could have happened based on the evidence that has been released that we really can't even begin to try to understand what the hell happened here. According to the cops, their theory of the case is that Melly, his co-defendant Cortland Henry, and the two victims, the two deceased, get in a car from a recording studio. And that another car also leaves the recording studio all at the same time. According to the cops, at some point when Melly's car is driving, something happens, whatever, and Melly shoots these two individuals inside the car. That's their working theory, that they were in the car and Melly shot these two guys. As for Cortland Henry, they say he's not the shooter, and they say that because Cortland Henry, the day of the shooting, was interrogated by police, and he submitted to a gunpowder residue test. And so he didn't have any residue on his hands. So the cops say, all right, Cortland wasn't the shooter, Melly shot both these guys. Then the cops say that after he shot him, what these guys did is they drove to another place and they tried to stage a drive-by shooting. And so the cops, they haven't shown all their cards yet, but from some of the very early probable cause affidavits in this case, the cops rely on a series of what could be very credible forensic analysis, or it might be total fucking junk science by a small town Florida police department. So what they basically say is, look, this is why I think it might be junk science. They actually, because they don't have like a forensic expert, and they say, oh, using string, detectives were able to, they literally use string and sticks to look at trajectory patterns. And so based on that, they say, look, there's no way that these guys told us that a car pulled up on their passenger side, unloaded, the drivers ducked, and these guys got shot. The cops say there's no way that lines up, because if you look at the entry of these bullet holes, it would have been from the other side. And then they just start piecing together all this stuff about, the trajectory of bullets and what really happened here. Then the cops go to cell phone analysis. And their cell phone analysis is saying that, look, Melly was in the car when the drive-by happened. And Melly and Henry's story is that Melly got out of the car way before any of that stuff happened. So this is very interesting because two things. One, just because Melly's cell phone is in the car, it does not mean Melly is in the car. And two, cell phones can be wildly different in terms of what they tell you about where someone is. And so there are cell phones that have triangulation, where you might be able to tell where someone is within a certain vicinity. And there are other types of cell phone evidence. And this has to do with not only the phone, but the network you're on and the towers in the area. So depending on all those factors, you might only be able to tell where someone generally is. In other cases, you might be able to tell where someone is exactly. Now, we just don't know right now the veracity, the credibility of the cops' forensic evidence speaking to, where these bullets came from and whether, in fact, it shows that it was a drive-by or whether these guys are lying about a drive-by. And again, we don't know what the cell phone tower data is going to be in terms of whether it's going to hold up and showing that this guy was exactly there, let alone whether he was with his phone. So huge questions abound. And now you get the entry of this DNA evidence. DNA evidence is very much a silver bullet, if it's you and your wife and you're accused of killing your wife and your DNA is found on your wife, it's not a big deal, right? But if it's you and somebody who's just a friend and now all of a sudden they have something that you're wearing or something that that other person is wearing and, blood splatter is on it, that's a little more questionable. We don't know right now what DNA evidence the cops are looking for. There's going to be a hearing coming up in a couple weeks, and that's going to be a big hearing that the cops are going to have to show their cards more in terms of what exactly the DNA evidence they're looking for. But what the cops have said so far, what we know is that there's a jacket. On that jacket is one of the victim's DNA, and the cops believe that Melly's DNA is also on the jacket, and that this jacket was, I don't know who in the car had this jacket on, but somebody in that car had this jacket on, and the fact that everybody's DNA is on it proves it. Under Florida law, the judge will decide whether or not YNW Melly has to submit to an oral swab to then give his DNA, which will then be used to match. But this case continues to be questions abound. Huge questions, lots of evidentiary considerations, and a case that looks like it's going to go to trial.